Cambridge, and welcome to What's That About, where we answer all your questions of the pressing issues of the day, brought to you by CCTV, Cambridge at 24 frames per second.
Cable TV is actually 59.94 frames per second, condensed to 29.97 interlaced images per second. It's close, but not exactly a ratio to the 60 hertz power grid because black and white broadcast was originally 30 exact frames per second, and they wanted it just a smidge off so as to not change the standard and allow viewers to still get a clear picture with a small adjustment to vertical hold.
What?
Our first question comes from Wendy on Oak Road. Wendy asks, you guys have been complaining about the lack of transparency on Beacon Hill for a while now, but are things finally changing for the better after the election, starting with an audit and new committee rules?
That's a good question, Wendy. As we know, Beacon Hill has been an opaque, corrupt hellhole where no one knows what goes on behind closed doors for years. But an audit of the state legislature was approved by referendum by 71% of voters. And after our own rep, Marjorie Decker, faced a primary candidate who challenged her on transparency and almost scored a huge upset win, it seems like the winds have changed, right, Julie?
Well,
Winds have changed, right, Julie?
Well, the state audit was passed into law by voters, and the House and Senate have both separately passed rules that should allow for more transparency for their separate houses, but...
There's always a big but when we talk about transparency on Beacon Hill, and not the kind of big but I like.
Yeah, there are at least two big buts. The first is that the state audit is being actively stonewalled by the legislature. Everyone on the Hill hates the idea of State Auditor DeZoglio carrying a sweeping performance audit.
Well, what about the Attorney General, Andrea Campbell? Shouldn't she be holding Speaker Mariano and President Spilka's feet to the fire on this? I mean, a successful referendum becomes law in this state.
Funny you bring up feet, because it sure seems like the AG is dragging hers on this issue. Most of the legislature has openly or discreetly complained that the audit is unconstitutional, but the AG has yet to pick a side, and no one has sued or even asked for a Supreme Court ruling.
Wait, they can just ask the Supreme Court for an opinion and not go through a lawsuit that could take years and cost the state millions of dollars?
Yes, there is a precedent for the court to rule on a law if asked, but I think the legislature would just prefer to drag it out further until it quietly dies. Meanwhile, Auditor DeZoglio seems okay to let that happen for now.
Why would she be okay with that?
It's not clear. She might find it politically advantageous to drag this out, or she might just be waiting for AG Campbell's position before she tries to force the issue in the court.
Why are state politics so shady and hard to understand? We do a show on this like every other week and I still don't get it. But at least the new committee rules are great, right, Julie?
Well...
I mean, at least the committee rules are great, right, Julie?
The new committee rules are a big improvement. Both the House and Senate have instituted rules that longtime transparency groups like Act en Masse have publicly applauded. Committee votes for both parties will now be made public. Most testimony before House and Senate committees will be public, and attempts were made to move up the legislative calendar while also allowing more time for the public and legislators to read bills and prepare for debates.
Well, that all sounds pretty great. I mean, even Speaker Mariano is supporting this 180-degree turn on transparency?
Yes, as we said, the last election really seems to have woken up our legislators to the idea that transparency is important to voters. However...
Okay, what's the big but on this one?
The big but is that the all-important joint committee rules, where most of the major work on bills gets done, have not been agreed upon by the House and Senate, even though there's seemingly relatively minor differences between the two houses' rules.
Wait, the legislature has been in session for 4 months and they still haven't agreed on joint committee rules? Why the hell not? Don't they know there's important work to be done with all this going on in the country?
They know, but again, it kind of feels like they just want to keep kicking the rules down the road for a while and hope people stop paying attention.
Is it because the House and Senate don't like each other very much? Because my sources tell me that the House and Senate leadership don't like each other very much.
Your sources?
You know, I got sources. I know things, Julie. Like, some senators have privately expressed sympathy for their colleagues in the House, because they know if anyone steps out of line there, Speaker for Life Ron Mariano will figuratively send them to legislative Siberia. I bet the House is the biggest stumbling block on getting agreement on the rules.
Is that what your sources say?
No, I just know from watching this show that the Speaker hates the idea of transparency.
Possibly, but current politics are too dire for this pointless bickering to continue. The state is under literal attack from the federal government as residents are being abducted on the street in broad daylight and spirited away to private prisons in Louisiana, yet there's still no apparent sense of urgency.
You're right, Julie. We need leadership from our state elected officials. There are policy steps they can and should be taking, like passing a safe communities law to prevent law enforcement from being deputized by ICE. Or they could pass a shield law to grant additional privacy for people receiving reproductive and gender-affirming care in the state. Almost everyone in the legislature say they agree on these things and other measures, but they seemingly aren't passing them because, well, we don't know why, because the debate on rules has, of course, been done in a completely opaque manner behind closed doors, as usual.
Yep. Call your legislators, people, and tell them we want action. You can find their numbers and emails here. Boop. Pretty much every Cambridge area legislator, including Representatives Marjorie Decker, Mike Connolly, and Senators Sal DiDomenico, Pat Jelen, and Will Brownsberger, have publicly stated they support the new transparency rules. So let's hold their feet to the fire and make them prove it by actually passing them.
Until next week, if there is a next week.
We'll see you first.
Tell me over and over and over again, my friend. You don't believe we're on the eve of destruction. Tell me over and over and over again, my friend. You don't